Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Locker Room, our weekly podcast where we shine a light on our student athletes here in the Bayou region. I am Stan Grabboy. He is Dustin Robichaud, a graphic designer here at Terriers General. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Stan. It's Cinco de Mayo.
It is Cinco de Mayo.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize that driving in this morning.
You got some big plans?
No. Maybe a nice margarita this afternoon wouldn't be bad, but no, I haven't ever done that. And I know yesterday was the 4th, May the 4th.
May the 4th be with you, yes.
To all of you out there. Don't do a whole lot for either one of those, obviously, Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, I wonder why I didn't even think about that coming in this morning. By the way, for you folks who don't realize, we actually sort of do this on mid-morning, on Monday mornings. It's released every afternoon. Certainly, we'd love for you to go out, like, and subscribe to what we do as we get you the latest in the Bayou region. But that being said, I didn't realize it. I don't think there's a lot of activities in the sports world going on today besides Major League Baseball and those things.
Right.
But boy, I got to tell you, listen, we have some state champions in the area now. And when I say state champions, I mean that with an S, plural. We added to that. Vandebilt Catholic's Lady Terriers won their 16th. That's right, folks, 16th state championship in softball. They're sort of the I guess you would call it the matriarch of softball in the area. I do know that they have the most state championships of any school in our state, and they did it again in Division II Select. They went out and took care of St. Charles Catholic 7-5 on actually, I was going to say Saturday, but it got moved back to Sunday because they had to play the semifinal. They actually won on Saturday to play on Sunday to win it also. Congratulations to the Lady Terriers. They actually had no problems on Saturday moving on, where they easily won their semifinal game. And I don't want to leave out Assumption High School and E.D. White. Assumption in Division II made it to the state championship in non-select and lost in the bottom of the 7th inning on a walk-off hit by a young lady from North DeSoto. So there was almost two teams from the same district winning state championships, but Assumption comes up just short. Certainly doesn't deter a wonderful season that they had this year. And E.D. White was in the semifinals. Unfortunately, the ladies from E.D. White lost to St. Charles Catholic, who went on to play Vandebilt Catholic in the state championship in Division II Select. So congratulations to those teams. Lutcher, too. I could throw Lutcher in there. Lutcher lost to North DeSoto. So 4 teams from the same district. That's pretty amazing. That's really amazing. All went on to compete in the Final Four in their respective brackets. Congratulations to them. You talked about Cinco de Mayo. Your big plans are?
Not much. I'm just going to take
Well, it's on a Monday.
It is. It is on Monday.
And I'm sure some people are going to have terrific times, but it's just not something that I recognize too much from working. I'm not a big drinker or partier.
There you go.
Don't work that way. I also want to mention that the state track and field meets are happening this weekend over at LSU. That's going to be Friday and Saturday. We actually have a local team, E.D. White, who has an opportunity, both boys and girls, if things worked out just right, to score enough points to possibly win a state championship. Remember, they do not split track and field. It's not select and non-select. It's all together. So it's public versus private, all in one setting. And for you people out there who thinking to yourselves, what sports do? I'm still a little confused. Football, basketball, both boys and girls, softball, and baseball have a select and a non-select division. Volleyball does not. So if you're a public school competing in volleyball, you got to go against the private schools. If you are like all of the what we call Olympic sports, bowling, track and field, golf, everything else, they all compete against each other. So track and field is just one major 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A. So I hope that answers any questions that any of you may have had. Got a good show for you today. Casey Gisclair going to be joining me. He actually was in Lake Charles for a lot of the softball tournament that happened this weekend. He can give us a little insight to exactly the track that Vandebilt Catholic had to do all of this. As a matter of fact, he was on the call for Vandebilt in one of those games. So we're going to talk to Casey, and we'll wrap things up by talking about a couple of other kids in our area who are doing really special things in their individual sports. Cooper Adams is a terrific golfer at Houma Christian. He shot a 70. I'm so jealous. This is a kid who's not even a senior. He's an undergraduate, and he shot a 70 in his regional to move on to the state tournament, which is happening today and tomorrow. That is phenomenal. Young lady Taylor Thomas at Thibodeau High School signed to play on the next level. Congratulations to her. A young man over at Messiah Montessori. Yep, that's right. First kid to ever sign to play on the next level from Messiah Montessori. There's a lot of people out there who are going, what's Messiah Montessori? Because they don't realize it. There are actually 8 high schools in Terrebonne Parish. A lot of people can maybe name 7. Most people could probably name 5, but there is Messiah Montessori. They only graduate a handful of kids every year, but a young man from there, John Titan Wynn, is a terrific tennis player, and he signed on Friday to play at Millsap. So congratulations to him. What an honor for him. We're going to move it on. We're going to get to Casey right now and talk a lot about the softball championships. Let's get to that now. I'm so happy to have Casey with me. Casey has been actually over in Lake Charles covering those state championship games for softball. How are you, my friend, and how was your weekend, and even extended more into the Friday, Saturday, Sunday?
I'm doing well. The weekend was very good. No complaints. I mean, the weather Friday was a bit of a bummer, but other than that, man, once the sun came out, it was gorgeous the rest of the weekend. So no complaints.
I would imagine yesterday would have been really nice. I'm sure they didn't want to necessarily do it on a Sunday, but the weather was beautiful, and you got all those championship games going on. I'd imagine just all around the park, you were hearing cheering from everywhere, kind of the atmosphere of that a little bit. Talk about it.
It's really cool. As you mentioned, there were 5 games going on at once. So there were 5 state championship games, all within, a quarter of a mile radius. The parks are just kind of in a big circle. So you're hearing roars, and you're hearing, bits and pieces of what the other PA announcers saying at the other field. You're hearing and looking and seeing scores and seeing scoreboards, and they're saying, hey, well, this game's 4-2, and that game's 1-0, and it's really cool. To lead off the week on Friday, the mayor of Lake Charles came on and was thanking everybody or whatever, and then they had some dignitaries there who mentioned that tournament has been there since 2001, and there's a reason, because they do an outstanding job putting on the event, and kudos to the folks there, because, it really is a first-class environment and a great setup.
Yep, that recreation department, the entire town of Sulphur, the entire area of Lake Charles does a great job. Before that, it used to be in Alexandria, and they did a great job.
Yep.
And people talk about how great this is, so that just kind of is a measuring stick of how really good both softball and baseball are held with state championships in that area. Obviously, we want to talk about Vandebilt Catholic. Vandebilt goes out and wins their 16th state title, which is pretty unheard of. That year, I'm going to compare it. You're talking about that rarefied air of, say, a John Curtis in football and those type things. You are pretty much the matriarch of softball in our area. And sort of convincingly, listen, I know it was 7-5. I know they could have lost either game. I realize all of those things. But when you sit back and look at it, the Lady Terriers know how to win those kind of games, right?
Vanderbilt was the best team in that bracket, and there was a gap between they and everyone else. Could someone have beaten them? Yeah, sure. Could someone have beaten them in a best of 7? Not a chance. They have players. Their lineup is deep. They have pitching, and they have unbelievable coaching. Man, Coach Spearman and Margaret Johnson. I mean, they don't lack for anything, man. They played well against Buckeye. They got a pretty strong challenge against a Buckeye team that, has a championship pedigree. They finished as the state runners-up last year. They're always in Sulphur. Vanderbilt got by that one. Then in the championship game, they actually fell behind 3-2 at one point, stormed out ahead, and as the Comets tried to make a run, just didn't get phased. And I think that's one of the big things. Those kids don't get rattled. They see everything there is to see during the season. And heck, we talk about CCA on the baseball side. They ended their season on a 20-plus game win streak. Vanderbilt did as well. So super impressive. Congratulations to them. And they were the best team in that bracket.
I think you worded it correctly. They don't lack for anything. And a
Yeah.
few things I was thinking of yesterday, I was sitting around with friends. We had a little get together, and I kept going to my phone to check, and they said, "What are you doing?" And I was going to Game Changer and kind of following them in Assumption. And we'll talk about Assumption in just a little bit. And they said, so they wanted to know, like, what's the score? They were trying to keep up. And we got into the conversation of how unbelievable it was that you had Vanderbilt, who wins a state championship, Assumption, who's playing on the other field in a state championship and almost won it. Again, we'll get to that in just a little while. Edie White, who plays in the semifinals and loses actually to St. Charles Catholic, and Lutcher, who's playing in the semifinals and loses to North DeSoto. So you have four teams in the same conference, or I should say division, bracket, district, and they're all like elite in the state. And that is pretty amazing. I think we're pretty fortunate. In other words, if you want to go out and see really good softball, you don't have to go very far from around here, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. You mentioned four teams from the same district. We had some very quality teams in our 5A district this year. Unfortunately, the playoffs didn't go their way. Houma Christian School was extremely young. They made it and made a little push. CCA, building that thing up. Yeah, we've got a lot of softball teams in our area that are real good. The sport has grown so much in our area. And then, as you mentioned earlier, we have the John Curtis football of softball in Vandebilt right in our backyard as well. So, the sport is booming, and it's in a really healthy place going forward.
I don't know if you saw, but Houma Christian like blasted St. Charles Catholic earlier in the year.
Yep.
And when I saw that score, I was like, they scored like 17 runs or something against St. Charles Catholic. And I'm sitting there going, I'm trying to put two and two together, and you don't always come out with four. And listen, I don't know who was pitching in the circle for St. Charles Catholic that day. I don't know all the circumstances, but it is pretty interesting that situation, it obviously shows what we have in our Bayou region. I'm going to ask you about another comment that was thrown out to me yesterday, and I never really considered it until the gentleman said it, and he was speaking of Vanderbilt. I told him, I said, listen, and this was right when the game got started, and I said, I don't think Vanderbilt's going to have any trouble in this game. I think at the very beginning of the year, we were actually sitting around saying that the hardest thing to do is going to be to win District 8 4A. I mean, the state championship is kind of secondary, right? Even though it's not, and we get that. And he made the comment, and he said this, and it's got me wondering. He said, in Division II Select, there are three teams that are going to wipe out everything in every sport. And I said, so who's your three teams? And he said, Vanderbilt Catholic, E.D. White, and Shaw. And I started thinking about it. So E.D. White and Shaw played for the football state championship. E.D. White was in the girls' state championship for volleyball. And then I think it may have been an all-girls school they played. I don't remember quite who it was. Then I jumped into basketball, and obviously, Jaworski and his girls do extremely well. Vanderbilt makes a little run, but Shaw's really good, right? So Now I'm starting to think, wait a minute, this guy's got something. Then I said to him, yeah, but in baseball, it's going to be tough for the Vanderbilt boys against Turlings because Turlings is so good. And he said, yeah, but the Turlings girls aren't in Division II. They're in Division I. And I was like, this is weird. It really. So I do think you mentioned the girls from Vanderbilt in softball sort of being head and heels, maybe above everybody else in that bracket. I'm starting to think he might be on to something. Those three teams might be head and heels above everybody in Division II, whatever Division II may be. Your thoughts?
Hard to argue. The only school that I would really maybe want to add to that would be a St. Charles Catholic on the football side. They're obviously really strong, but there is, and you said this often, as we've done radio and different things together, you said often in Division II Select, there's a very clear, these are the ones who are very gifted athletically, and these are the ones who are not. And that list only has, 5-6 teams. That other list has 15-20 teams. So it is a bracket that is usually very top heavy, and Vanderbilt and E.D. White are on the good side, so to speak, and in a great shape to compete in just about every sport.
We actually did talk a little bit about St. Charles Catholic, and his thought was is it's not there yet numbers wise. Like
Yeah.
they're coming up from 2A to 3A, so he said, but give them about 3 years, and they're going to be in a discussion of everything, and they're kind of being in that discussion right now, right? So I did say we needed to talk about Assumption a little bit. What a heartbreaking loss. I don't know if you were anywhere near that field when it came down to the conclusion of it. But the Lady Mustangs are actually up 5-4 going into the seventh inning, and they can't hold on. It's a walk-off for North DeSoto. Nonetheless, we kind of said this about maybe a month and a half ago. We could see Assumption making a little run, and they did just that. By the way, Vandebilt's going to win it next year, too. They don't have a senior on the team. I don't know what Assumption's classification of girls are. I don't know if they were senior heavy or what the case may be. And that's going to happen a little bit more. Just being honest with public schools, you got to get in a cycle because you're pulling within a zone of students. So that being said, boy, I just hope that nobody sort of, looks at Assumption and says, oh, they lost. That was a pretty good feat by the Lady Mustangs, too.
Oh, absolutely, man. You go there as the 3 seed. You beat number 2 Bruley, and then you had number 1 beat, man. You had them by a run late in the game. They were able to rally. Understand I was not at that field, but I heard the oohs and the ahs. Understand maybe a defensive miscue here or there kind of helped out North DeSoto. But, dude, you finished the season runner-up, and I mentioned this on all of my broadcasts this weekend for the LHSA Network. Made sure to go out of my way to congratulate the teams as they're getting their second place trophies. They're all crying and they don't want to go get the trophy. But I made sure to mention, like, hey, it doesn't mean anything to them now, but like a week from now, a month from now, those kids are going to realize, my God, we had an awesome year. I mean, when you could finish as the state runner-up in a sport as competitive as softball, that's an unbelievable accomplishment, and Assumption has nothing to hang their heads about.
Agree, 100%. Thought it was exciting to have 2 teams there. And hopefully we could sort of reproduce some of that in baseball. We jumped to baseball just a little bit. Vandebilt had an easy time with Buckeye. Maybe a little easier than what I thought. You had a nice little tribute to the Hebert kid because he had that injury with his jaw. I think that's a situation. I can't imagine that he's going to be back and he's a starting shortstop for the Terriers, right?
He's out for the season, yeah.
They have to play Turlings Catholic. That's not going to be easy. Turlings, how do I say this? We're not saying Vandebilt can't win it, right? But just like Vandebilt's girls might have been a little bit ahead of everybody else in softball, a lot of people feel that's how Turlings is in baseball right now. Again, Turlings girls play in Division I. The boys play in Division II. And that's just because they split it in 4 when it's all said and done. Edie White went out, and I was really surprised, just really took care of St. Charles Catholic. And dare I say, they may have a little bit better of a path to get to the state championship. They're going out and play Hannon. Not going to be easy. I'm not saying it's easy. I hate when I say something like that, and we understand the context of what we're saying it. But there's a lot of folks out there who say, oh, he said they were going to win. I'm not saying that. I am saying that Hannon is the number 6 seed. I mean, heck, Edie White almost got to host going into Sulphur. So that's pretty amazing along the way, and we hope those 2 teams do well. Of course, CCA, I don't want to call it an easy time because actually they were the beneficiary of a couple of miscues by St. Martin's, yet St. Martin's never really threatened to score that much in the game either. So 3 teams that if things go right, maybe we can see them in Sulphur making some noise.
100%. And let's talk about Edie White for a second. They were 0-5. They were 2-8. They were 4-10. And the whole first half of the season, everybody's like, well, what the heck's going on with Edie White? What's Coach Plitt doing out there? Why are they struggling? And we kept having him on the radio, and he kept saying, hey, we're playing better than our record would indicate. Just not getting any breaks, hitting balls right at people. We're going to be okay. Sure enough, here they are. They beat St. Charles in a sweep. Now they're taking on Hannon, and they have a great shot to be in the state championship in Division II Select. On the Vandebilt side, I am a little surprised by the score of that Game 2 game against Buckeye, where they get a 3-inning Mercy Rule win, because I was told that Buckeye didn't use their ace in game one. So they did that to their number one pitcher. I guess it just chased them out early and just kind of tomahawked everybody else. I guess it was just kind of a gut punch once they hammered the number one arm. So the Terriers are rolling. As you mentioned, they got to take on Turlings. That's not going to be an easy feat. But it's a Vandebilt team, and Coach Chad Menard has said all year, we have scheduled our regular season schedule for this. They have played weekends, tournaments, and everything all over the place. Being in a hotel is not going to bother them. That's what they're used to. That's what they planned for. And then on the CCA side, Joe told me, and he's not going to be afraid or he's not going to be embarrassed at me sharing this. He said, hey, look, we didn't play well against St. Martin's. It was not our best performance. He thinks that that's rust. They had 15 days off. I think that was rust. They had 15 days off. I think they'll be sharper against St. Fred's. And the thing that is really beneficial for the Lions, Stan, is that even when they don't play their best, they don't give up any runs. So, yeah, we're used to seeing 12-0, 13-0, but even if the bats are not hot, they'll still beat you 4-0, which is exactly what they did.
Yeah, it was a shutout. I'm saying it's close, right? It's a shutout with a team that really didn't threaten too much in the game. So that being said, you have to realize that's sort of where we're comparing CCA now to everything. I will say this. I'm going back as you were talking. I'm thinking of Chad Menard and I'm thinking of Matt Plitt. Both of those coaches have the utmost feeling in talking to them. What you do at certain times of the year doesn't matter. Wait, I shouldn't say doesn't matter. They're getting ready for the future. They're getting ready for this time more than a lot of coaches in our area, quite honestly. You have some coaches in our area that are trying to build up wins. They're just trying to win every game. And those coaches are trying to win, but they'll throw a sophomore in there to see if he could do certain things in certain situations to know when it comes to this time of the year how to get it done. And I'm not throwing Joe under the bus when I say that because, quite honestly, Joe said, yeah, we 35-0, but if we don't win a state championship, this was a failure. He knows that. He understands that. They just happen to go out and win every game along the way. And by the way, he wins them by 10-run rules, so some of his starters don't get to play a full game most of the time. And then he's got a couple of younger kids he gets to leak in there every once in a while, so that helps for the future. So it's an interesting dynamic related to baseball in our area and what could and might happen along the way. And we certainly hope it does happen along the way. The one thing is, and we've said this over and over and over again, you play in 2 out of 3 for Vandebilt and for Edie White, and you're not doing that with CCA. CCA has had a gap of 8 days. They're going to play on Friday against St. Fred's, and St. Fred's has got an LSU arm that's going to be thrown against them. So you wonder how that's all going to work out. Have you heard anything about the kid at St. Fred's?
Well, I know he's going to have a busy week, but as I understand, I think he may also be on the track team, and he may be competing in the state track meet Thursday. So hopefully he takes all out his sea legs there on Thursday for CCA's sake. But no, he's a big arm. He's going to be tough, and I think that the Lions are going to counter with Owen Gisclair as they've been doing. I don't expect a whole lot of runs. I think that this could be a 4-2 type ball game. The only way that it could maybe be some separation is if CCA were to chase the arm out early, and then maybe they could tee off. But it should be a good ball game, very competitive. And let me say this, man, it was incredible, the environment at CCA on that Friday night game against St. Martin's. That place was packed. The grandstand behind home plate was packed. But around the stadium, and you know what it looks like out there, there's a lot of just like greenery where you could just kind of sit wherever. Those were like 3 and 4 deep with people in their chairs, and in the outfield, the students were out there. It was choked, and it was very loud, very rowdy, great scene. And I expect, especially on a Friday, I expect it to be even bigger this coming Friday.
My only thought was I was hoping it would be a little early in the week so that the kid wouldn't get enough time. I wish they would have scheduled it on the Thursday. But I realize that both teams have to agree just to not have that arm thrown against them. Because, again, one and done is such a bad thing. It doesn't give a true testament to, like, the entirety of your team. And obviously CCA is really good this year. I'm going to leave you with this one thought. I am sort of scouring through all of the track and field individual results at all of the regions, right? I'm looking at regional results, and I'm doing this because of the deal with HTV now, which I'm going to get you to come on there eventually with me, and we'll do some stuff on there. And I see Tiana Stewart throws the shot put for Vandebilt. I'm going, she throws it, and she wins the regional throwing the shot put. That's unreal. That's
He's a point guard, man.
the point guard of the team. It also makes me understand. I don't know if you agree with this or not. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I had a long discussion with Pat Parrington the other day about this too. His son, Michael, going into our Hall of Fame, is a terrific, terrific athlete who played at Tulane and with the Jets. And I said, Michael, did basketball have anything to do with that? He says, basketball's got everything to do with everything, man. That is in my opinion, now I'm not even putting words in Pat's mouth. In my opinion, it's that sport that if you can do basketball, you pretty much can do a lot of things. You can be a football player. You might not have the physicality. You can throw a shot put. You might not quite be at the strength, but you have the dexterity and the whatever else. And she goes out and do. And I remember there was a basketball player in the early 90s named Andre Brown. You might remember that name. Andre actually went off and played at Seton Hall, and he would walk on the track and pick up the javelin and just blow everybody away. And when she did that, I thought, wow, this is going to be interesting. By the way, state track meet this weekend for a lot of our local teams. Edie White has an outside chance of possibly winning it. Remember, track and field's all together. So does that amaze you like it amazes me? I know I was long-winded with that.
No, look. So as you're saying, and here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of it from the inside out. I'm thinking of, okay, well, you got a young lady who's that strong, who's your point guard, and I look at basketball like a chess match. If your point guard is trying to get all the other pieces on the board out of place, well, if your point guard is strong enough to get where she wants to get at all times, you're going to be in good shape. And when your point guard is winning the shot put in the regional track meet, she's obviously strong enough to get where she wants to get in any point on the floor. And you mentioned basketball being kind of a catalyst for some other sports. The reason for that is the basic footwork fundamentals of basketball carry over to every single sport. You mentioned the Stewart kid. What do you have to do to be a good shot putter? You got to know leverage. You got to have the right footwork. You got to know, how to get that thing out there and do it whenever your body's pushing forward, the most momentum. You learn a lot of those same fundamentals on the basketball side. Track and field, you got to have that quick first step. Guess what? Same thing in basketball when you're in that triple threat position ready to explode. So I think it's the sport that the basic footwork fundamentals, those are needed in every other sport.
Agree, 100%. Again, Edie White's track team, both boys and girls, won their regional fairly easily. But when you get to this level, listen, Ellender's got a hurdler who won 2 events, Marcus Thomas. So Ellender's going to score substantially at the state meet. So who knows what happens there? It's just the way things sort of work out. The young lady from Edie White, Chloe, I can't remember her name. I shouldn't even brought it up if I can't remember the name. But young basketball player actually won the regional in an event. So we hope all of our track and field kids do well. We'll talk a little bit about that next week. And again, congratulations to Vandebilt Catholic's Lady Terriers. What a program that is. What a coaching staff. And you're right, they lack for nothing there. Congratulations to Assumption High School. Congratulations to you for being on that call. And you heading up in a couple of weeks for baseball too?
That's the plan. Yeah, we should be out there. And look, very quick while we're giving some attaboys, I want to give kudos to Bruley. Their softball coach is Bo Bouvier, who's a graduate of South Lafourche. They ended up losing in the semifinals. And also Opelousas Catholic, their coach is Cullen Mathern, who is a South Lafourche guy. Actually had their championship game. They came up short yesterday in the championship game. They were the defending champions, lost to Holy Savior Menard. But that's the thing. And it's funny. You don't realize how people kind of branch out and do their own thing. I'm at the CCA St. Martin's game, and I hear somebody say, "Hey, Gisclair." Like, okay, this is coming from the St. Martin's dugout. How do you guys know me? It's Kip Laird's son, who's the former coach at South Lafourche baseball. So, he's got a coach out there, a son out there that's coaching for St. Martin's. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that we shouted out Coach Bouvier and Coach Mathern. They also were at Sulphur and also had amazing seasons with their teams.
Very good. Very good. Thank you always for the time.
100%.
We'll keep in touch. A little bit of track next week, and we'll talk more about baseball.
Can't wait.
It's always great to have Casey on. Gives us a lot of insight. Again, go to Bite Time Sports to find out more about what's going on in the world of sports, because he covers that on a daily basis. Big congratulations to Cooper Adams. We actually know his mother and father, who both work here, Dr. Adams, Dr. Diane Adams, and Tiffany Adams, who does a lot in our area as far as civic giving and working with a lot of organizations that are just out there taking care of our community. Cooper is a terrific golfer, and he golfs for Houma Christian. He went out in the regional. Now, this is not the state tournament. He's actually competing at the Wetlands in Lafayette this weekend. He competed at the regionals and shot a 70, the lowest score ever in the history of Houma Christian. So congratulations to him. That is a terrific feat for that young man. We wish him well at state competition. We also wish well to Taylor Thomas, a young lady who played basketball over at Thibodeau High School. She has decided to cast her lot with Delgado Community College. She said it was a dream of hers to always play on the next level, and she's getting that opportunity. Congratulations to Taylor as she is moving on to Delgado. And I also mentioned a little bit earlier, a young man that both Dustin and I got to meet last week, John Titan Wynn, who goes over to Messiah Montessori, which again is a school that does not compete in the Louisiana High School Athletic Association. They actually don't compete in any association. John Titan is a guy who got involved with USTA and everything else related to tennis, a very good tennis player. He did win the LCEA title for the state of Louisiana, which is a Christian school title. And he decided to cast his lot with Millsaps in Jackson, Mississippi, a really phenomenal school there. And he's very excited about that. He signed on Friday over at the school, over at Messiah Montessori in the cathedral there. And he'll be going on to play there. So congratulations to him. Those kids all really deserve it. And we'll be following their career as they move forward. Hope you all enjoyed our podcast today. We'll be back next Monday. Track and field championships and lots of other championships, golf, tennis, everything sort of culminating right now. So we'll give you more as we move on next week.